Wherever you are in the world tonight, welcome. This is Sleepy Eastern Philosophy coming to you from Japan. Tonight, we sit with fear, not to conquer it, not to pretend it isn't there, but to understand what an ancient tradition of warriors learned about living fully in the presence of the unknown. Find a comfortable position. Let your body settle into whatever is supporting you. Feel the weight of the day beginning to lift. You have made it to tonight. Whatever the day asked of you, you are here. That is enough. Block 1. The night before. There is a particular quality to nighttime fear. It is different from daytime fear. Daytime fear has edges. It is attached to specific things. A meeting, a deadline, a number on a screen. You can point at it. You can make a plan. Nighttime fear is different. It spreads. It loses its edges. It becomes less about any one specific thing and more about everything at once. The job that might not be there next year. The industry that is changing faster than you can follow. The savings that feel less certain than they did. The future that used to feel like a destination and now feels like a fog. You lie in the dark and the mind begins its inventory. What if? What if? What if? This is the mind doing what minds do, scanning for danger, running scenarios, trying to find solid ground in a landscape that keeps shifting. It is not weakness. It is not failure. It is an ancient mechanism, doing exactly what it was designed to do. But the mechanism was designed for a different world, a world of immediate, physical threats, a predator in the grass, a storm on the horizon, dangers that could be outrun or outfought or hidden from. The dangers of the modern world are different. They are diffuse. They are systemic. They cannot be outrun because they are not behind you. They are woven into the fabric of the economy, the technology, the systems that your life depends on. And so, the ancient mechanism fires and fires and fires and finds no resolution, because there is no predator to outrun. There is only the fog, the shifting landscape, the future that will not hold still. Tonight, we travel back to another age of uncertainty. An age when warriors faced death every morning and still found a way to be fully alive. What did they know that we have forgotten? Let your body soften now. Let the breath come easily. The questions can wait. Tonight, we only listen. Block 2. What fear actually is. Before we meet the samurai, let us spend a moment with fear itself. Because fear is one of the most misunderstood experiences in human life. We treat it as an enemy, something to be overcome, something that marks us as weak or unprepared. The person who is not afraid, we say, is brave. The person who is afraid is holding themselves back. But this is wrong. Fear is information. It is the nervous system's way of saying, something important is at stake here. Something you value is at risk. Pay attention. The person who feels no fear in a genuinely dangerous situation is not brave. They are disconnected. They have lost the signal. Fear, in its original form, is not the opposite of courage. It is the precondition of courage. You cannot be brave about something that doesn't frighten you. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act in the presence of it. The samurai understood this, not theoretically, practically, in the body, in the breath, in the moment before the sword is drawn. They did not try to eliminate fear. They trained their relationship with it. They learned to feel it without being consumed by it, to act from it, rather than being paralyzed by it, to let it sharpen attention, rather than scatter it. This is what we are learning tonight. Not how to stop being afraid, but how to be afraid and still be here, fully here, present, alive in the uncertainty rather than frozen by it. Block 3. The Way of the Samurai. Bushido, Wushidao, the Way of the Warrior. It is one of the most misunderstood traditions in Japanese history. In popular imagination, the samurai is a figure of martial prowess, a fighter, a swordsman, an action hero in armor. But the deeper tradition of Bushido was never primarily about fighting. It was about how to live. The samurai code drew from 3 sources. From Buddhism, it took the acceptance of impermanence, the recognition that all things, including one's own life, are temporary. That attachment to outcomes creates suffering. That the present moment is the only place where action is possible. From Zen, it took the practice of total presence, the discipline of the mind that does not split between what is happening and what might happen. The warrior who is half in the present and half in an imagined future is a warrior who will not survive. From Confucianism, it took the ethics of loyalty and honor, the understanding that a life worth living is a life lived in relationship to one's Lord, one's family, one's community. That individual survival, divorced from purpose, is not really survival at all. Together, these 3 streams form the philosophy not of violence, but of readiness. Readiness for whatever comes, without flinching, without clinging, without the desperate need for the future to be a particular way. The samurai was ready for death, not because they did not value life, but because the acceptance of death was the only path to being fully alive. Block 4. Bushido and Death. Hagakure. In the early 18th century, a samurai named Yamamoto Tsunetomo dictated a collection of thoughts and observations to a young scribe named Tashiro Tsurumoto. These observations were compiled into a text called the Hagakure. Jieyin, hidden among the leaves. The Hagakure is a strange and beautiful document. It is part practical manual, part philosophy, part meditation, and it begins with one of the most startling sentences in Japanese literature. I have found that the way of the samurai is death. This phrase has been misunderstood for centuries. It sounds like a glorification of violence, or a morbid preoccupation with mortality. But Tsunetomo meant something more subtle. He meant that the samurai who clings to life, who calculates the odds, who hedges their commitment, who holds something in reserve in case things go wrong, is not fully present. They are managing their existence rather than living it. The samurai who has accepted death, who has already surrendered the outcome, is free. Free to act without hesitation. Free to commit completely. Free to be fully here, because there is nothing left to protect. This is not a philosophy of recklessness. It is a philosophy of release. The release of the desperate need to control outcomes. The release of the exhausting project of ensuring that the future unfolds exactly as you require it to. In the Hagakure, Tsunetomo writes, "If one is not able to make a decision within the space of 7 breaths, it will be difficult to decide." 7 breaths. Not 7 days. Not 7 months of analysis and planning. 7 breaths. Because the warrior who thinks too long has already left the present moment. They are living in a future that does not yet exist, managing a danger that may never arrive, absent from the only moment in which action is actually possible. Block 5. The uncertain economy. Let us bring this forward now, into this century, into this particular fog of uncertainty that so many of us are navigating. The economy is changing. This is not a temporary disruption. It is a structural shift. Artificial intelligence is not just a new tool. It is a new kind of worker. One that does not sleep, does not ask for raises, does not need health insurance, and improves continuously. Entire categories of work are being reconsidered. Industries that seemed permanent are being disrupted. Business models that worked for decades are struggling to survive. And the people inside these systems, the workers, the managers, the founders, are feeling something very specific. Not just anxiety about one particular job, but a deeper disorientation. The rules have changed. The map no longer matches the territory. The skills that took years to develop may no longer carry the value they once did. The career path that seemed clear has become something more like open water. This is genuinely difficult. I do not want to minimize it, but I want to offer something the samurai tradition understood that our culture tends to forget. The uncertainty is not new. The fog is not new. The feeling of standing at the edge of a world that is changing faster than you can follow is as old as human civilization. Every generation has had its version of this. The farmer watching the first factories appear. The craftsman watching machines do what hands used to do. The merchant watching trade routes shift. Each generation faced the same terror. The world I trained for is becoming a different world. What am I now? What will I do? And the ones who survived, not just materially, but spiritually, were the ones who could release the old world before the new one had fully arrived. The ones who could stand in the fog without demanding that the fog resolve immediately. This is the practice. This is what we are learning. Block 6. Mushin. No mind. In Zen and in the martial arts tradition, there is a state called Mushin. Wushin. No mind. It is not a state of blankness or stupidity. It is a state of complete readiness. The mind in Mushin is not fixed on any particular thought. It is not rehearsing the future. It is not processing the past. It is open, available, fully here without agenda. The martial artist in Mushin does not think about what move to make. They respond directly to what is happening. The response arises from the body, from training, from a quality of attention that is too fast and too fluid for deliberate thought. This is the ideal the samurai trained toward. Not the elimination of the mind, but the liberation of the mind from its own compulsive activity. The mind that is always calculating, always projecting, always asking, what if, what if, what if? The mind in Mushin is not worried about next year. It is not rehearsing the conversation it needs to have. It is not building spreadsheets of possible futures. It is here, just this moment, just this breath, just this. Now, I am not suggesting you should stop planning. Planning is useful. Preparation is necessary. The samurai trained for years. That is a form of planning. But there is a difference between preparation and anxiety. Preparation acts. Anxiety rehearses. Preparation engages with what is real and present. Anxiety engages with imagined futures that may never arrive. Mushin is not the absence of preparation. It is the absence of the anxious rehearsal that keeps us from being present to the only moment we actually have. Block 7. The Ronin. There is a figure in Japanese history that speaks directly to our moment. The Ronin, Lang Ren, a samurai without a master. In feudal Japan, the Ronin occupied a strange and difficult position. They had lost, through the death of their lord, through defeat, through circumstance, the structure that had given them identity and purpose. They were warriors with skills, but no clear role. Trained for a world that no longer needed them in the same way. Set adrift in a system that had no obvious place for them. The history of the Ronin is complex. Some became criminals. Some became teachers. Some wandered. Some found new lords. Some created entirely new paths. The 47 Ronin, the story most Westerners know, spent years as masterless samurai, enduring poverty and humiliation before finding their purpose. But what strikes me about the Ronin is this. The skill was never lost. The training was never wasted. The discipline accumulated over years of practice did not disappear when the structure disappeared. The world had changed. The role had vanished. But the person, the trained, practiced, disciplined person, remained. And from that person, new paths became possible. This is what I want you to hear tonight. If you are in your own version of being a Ronin, if the industry has changed, if the role has been eliminated, if the path that seemed clear has gone foggy, the skills are not gone. The years of effort were not wasted. What you have built inside yourself does not depend on external structures to remain real. You are the training, not the title, not the company, not the role. You. Block 8. Impermanence as armor. The Buddhist concept that runs deepest through the samurai tradition is the concept of impermanence. Mujo, Wuchang. All things change. All conditions are temporary. The flower blooms and falls. The season turns. The life that was here is gone. We encountered this in an earlier episode, but tonight, I want to approach it from a different angle. Because in the samurai tradition, impermanence was not primarily a cause for grief. It was a source of freedom, if everything is impermanent, if no condition is permanent, then the bad condition is also impermanent. The difficulty is temporary. The uncertainty will resolve into something. Not necessarily what you wanted, not necessarily according to your timeline, but into something. The samurai who truly accepted impermanence was liberated from the terror of loss. Because you cannot truly lose what you never permanently possessed. The job was always temporary. The industry was always temporary. The security you felt was always a particular arrangement of conditions that could and would eventually change. This sounds like cold comfort, but it is not. Because the same impermanence that takes away the good also limits the bad. The fear that feels overwhelming tonight will not feel this way forever. The fog will shift, not because you demanded it to, but because everything shifts, because nothing stays. The samurai wore impermanence like armor, not because it made them invulnerable, but because it freed them from the desperate need for things to be other than they are. This is a different kind of protection, not a wall against change, but a deep, practiced acceptance of change that makes you harder to destroy. Block 9. Courage is not the absence of fear. I want to say something clearly now, because I think it needs to be said. The uncertainty you are feeling is real. The fear is legitimate. The questions do not have easy answers. I am not here to tell you that everything will be fine. I do not know that. Neither do you. Neither does anyone. What I can tell you is what the samurai tradition observed over centuries of living with uncertainty. Fear does not mean you are failing. Fear means something important is at stake. Fear means you are paying attention. The person who feels no fear in genuinely uncertain times is either numbed or not paying attention. You are paying attention. That is not weakness. That is the beginning of wisdom. The samurai did not become fearless. They became skilled at acting in the presence of fear, at feeling the contraction of the chest, the heightening of the senses, the sharpening of attention that fear brings, and moving forward anyway. Not because the outcome was guaranteed, not because they knew how it would end, but because waiting for certainty meant waiting forever. And forever is not available. Only now is available. Only this breath. Only this moment. Only this particular darkness in which you are still breathing, still here, still more capable than the fear would have you believe. Block 10. The present moment as battlefield. The Zen master Takuan Soho wrote a remarkable letter to a swordsman in the 17th century. The letter is called The Unfettered Mind, Fudochi Shinmyoroku, Bu Dongji Shenmiaolu. In it, Takuan describes the fundamental problem of the warrior. Where does the mind go? If the mind fixes on the opponent's sword, it will be captured by the sword. If it fixes on the opponent's eyes, it will be captured by the eyes. If it fixes on the desire to win, it will be captured by the desire to win. The mind that fixes anywhere becomes unavailable to everything else. The solution is not to fix the mind on nothing. That would be blankness. It is to let the mind move freely, without stopping anywhere. Like water that finds every crack filling each space completely and then moving on. Not pooling, not stagnating, always moving, always present, always available. This is the quality of mind that the modern moment demands. Not a mind fixed on the worst possible outcome. Not a mind rehearsing the conversation that hasn't happened. Not a mind paralyzed by the possibility of loss. A mind that moves freely through the available information, that acts where action is possible, that rests where rest is appropriate, that does not pool in the dark corners of what might happen, but keeps flowing, keeps moving, keeps arriving in the present. The present moment is your battlefield, not the imagined future, not the reconstructed past. Here, now, this. Everything you need to navigate this uncertainty is available here, not in the fog of what might be, but in the clarity of what is. Block 11. What the sword teaches. The sword has been a symbol in Japanese culture for far longer than it has been a weapon. In Shinto, the sword is one of the 3 imperial treasures, a symbol of wisdom and discernment, the capacity to cut through confusion, to see clearly, to act decisively. In the Zen tradition, the sword became a metaphor for the discriminating wisdom of the enlightened mind, the ability to cut away what is not essential, to separate the real from the imagined, the present from the projected. What the sword teaches is not violence, it teaches presence. To use a sword truly, skillfully, requires a quality of attention that excludes nothing and grasps at nothing. The hand that grips too tightly cannot respond. The eye that stares too hard cannot see. The swordsman who is already celebrating victory has lost contact with the present moment. The swordsman who is already fearing defeat has also lost contact with the present moment. Both are gone from the only place where anything can actually be done. Your situation tonight is not a sword fight, but the teaching applies. The grip on the fear, the tightness, the rehearsing, the catastrophizing is itself the problem, not the fear, the grip. What would it feel like to hold the uncertainty more lightly, not to make it disappear, not to pretend it isn't there, but to carry it without the white-knuckled grip? To acknowledge, yes, the future is uncertain. Yes, things might change in ways I don't want. Yes, I don't know how this will resolve. And still to be here, still breathing, still present, still capable of the next step, whatever that step turns out to be. Block 12. Letting the future be unwritten. There is a practice in some Zen traditions of sitting with a question without seeking an answer. Not because answers are unimportant, but because premature answers close off possibilities that haven't yet appeared. The mind that insists on knowing how things will resolve before it can rest is a mind that will not rest. Because the future is genuinely open, not in a naive, everything will be fine way, but in the real philosophical sense that the future has not yet been determined. It is being shaped, right now, by choices that have not yet been made, by conditions that have not yet fully emerged, by possibilities that are not yet visible. The samurai who could hold this openness, who could stand at the edge of the unknown without demanding that it resolve, had a kind of freedom that the rest of us struggle to find. Tonight, I want to offer you a small version of this freedom. Just for the duration of this night, just for the hours between now and morning. Let the future be unwritten, not permanently, not as a permanent abandonment of planning, but for now, tonight. You have done what you can do. Whatever thinking needs to happen will still be available tomorrow. Whatever decisions need to be made will still be there when you wake. Tonight, the sword can rest. Tonight, the warrior can put down the weight of all that preparing. Tonight, the only task is this: to breathe, to let the body rest, to let the mind, just for a few hours, stop rehearsing a future that hasn't happened yet. Block 13. The warrior rests. In the samurai tradition, there was an understanding that rest was not weakness. It was preparation. The warrior who did not sleep was not more ready. They were less ready. The body that was not allowed to recover would fail at the moment it was needed most. Rest was not the absence of discipline. Rest was the completion of discipline. The daily practice of the samurai was not all intensity and focus. It included the tea ceremony. It included poetry. It included the contemplation of nature, the moon, the cherry blossoms, the mountain, things that had nothing to do with fighting and everything to do with being fully human. Because the warrior who had lost their humanity was not a warrior anymore. They were only a weapon, and a weapon without a human hand to guide it is just a dangerous object. The samurai traditions of Mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of the beauty of passing things, were not separate from the martial training. They were part of it. To see the cherry blossoms and understand that they would fall. To feel the ache of that. To let it matter. This was the training of the heart that made the training of the body meaningful. And tonight, in whatever version of a warrior's life you are living, the late nights, the difficult decisions, the uncertainty that does not resolve, the fog that does not lift, tonight you are allowed to rest. Not because the challenges are over, not because the questions have been answered, but because rest is what the next step requires. The sword can be quiet tonight. The armor can be laid aside. There will be time tomorrow for whatever tomorrow requires. Tonight, just this. Just the breath. Just the dark. Just the body resting in the only moment that actually exists. Block 14. Return. Lay down the sword. We have traveled far tonight, from the nighttime fear that spreads without edges, to the samurai who learned to act in the presence of death, from the Hagakure's radical instruction to accept the worst, to Mushin, the no mind that is fully present and fully free, from the Ronin who lost everything and still carried their training, to the sword that teaches presence rather than violence, from Takuan's unfettered mind, moving like water, to the warrior who rests because rest is the next preparation. And now, At the end of this long, quiet journey, one simple invitation. Lay down the sword. Not permanently. You will pick it up again tomorrow. The challenges will still be there. The uncertainty will still be there. The fog will not have cleared completely. But tonight, just for these hours, the sword can rest beside you. You have carried it long enough today. You have been vigilant enough. You have worried the right amount, prepared the right amount, held the uncertainty with enough care. The ancient warriors knew something that our culture has almost entirely forgotten. The warrior who cannot rest will eventually break. Not from the enemy outside, but from the weight of their own vigilance. You are allowed to put it down. Feel the breath arriving, slow and full and unhurried. Feel the weight of the body, heavy and warm against whatever is holding you. Somewhere in Japan, the mountains are very old and very still. They have seen the rise and fall of every era, every age of uncertainty, every generation that feared the future and somehow found its way through. You are part of that long, unbroken line of human beings who faced the unknown and kept going anyway. Not because they were never afraid, but because they were afraid, and still, they kept going. The sword is resting now. The warrior is resting. The fog will still be there tomorrow, and you will face it then. But tonight, just this. Just the breath. Just the dark. Just the quiet, which has been here all along, underneath the fear, waiting for you to find it. Sleep well, warrior.